His love for the game strengthened his attention to detail. However, it was his passion for coding that helped him achieve a top position in the tech world. When the time came, his leadership was tested. He decided to face the issues rather than hiding behind a culture of denial.
Two young black men in our stores waiting to have a business meeting were asked to leave, and then the police were called and they were escorted out of the store. From that, it became clear to me that there is an action here that we are going to take. And so by the second day, I announced we were closing all Starbucks stores to go through anti-bias training.
He calls himself the chief agitator of innovation for a century-old company. Isolation or inclusivity? What kind of trade can make sure everyone is profiting?
Free trade deals are good overall for all participants, but I don't think we should deconstructing global trade.
Every year, billions of people buy beverages. It's a $1 trillion industry, and these are two of the few people who run and control it.
Johnson, welcome to Bloomberg Big Decisions.
Well, David, welcome to Starbucks.
It's great to be here. Thank you. So doing things that are joyful with people you love. I heard that somewhere from you, frankly. Take me back to Los Alamos. Take me back to a power forward on a basketball team. What of that joy, what of the people you love came out of that early experience?
Well, you know, I grew up in New Mexico. My father is a theoretical physicist. My mother is a nurse. And so, you know, my father had this great sense of focus on learning and intellectual stimulation. But it was my mom, really, that was about compassion and empathy. And so, you know, I feel like a lot of who I am was shaped by the differences in my two parents. And, you know, growing up in New Mexico, I fell in love with the game of basketball and became a big fan of Coach John Wooden, and I played on the high school team. And I just loved team sports because it was a competition. And it was with people that you trusted and that you loved because you had to work together.
And that duality, if I could put it that way, did it continue into your career?
Well, it did, and I think the thing I fell in love with software was it was a way to express myself. Like I could write software programs and show people what they would do, and you know, see the amazement on their face, or demonstrate something that they hadn't seen before. And so in some ways it was a way to bring people together, but it was also a way for me just to express myself intellectually and emotionally.
You mentioned Coach Wooden and your admiration for Coach Wooden.
Well, it was my father that introduced me to the genius of Coach John Wooden. My father was a young man, he loved basketball. And when I was probably 6 or 7, 8 years old, he would tell me about Coach Wooden and the UCLA Bruins. And so every Saturday when college basketball was on television, I would find what channel was UCLA playing on. And I started reading Coach Wooden's books. And my father he went to Washington State University. And when the UCLA Bruins would come to play the Washington State University Cougars, my father would sneak into the gymnasium the day before the game and sit in the empty bleachers just to watch Coach Wooden run practice. And my father described it as basketball poetry. You know, Coach Wooden would quietly walk up and down the sidelines, but every player knew that they had a role to play, and it was choreographed, it was artful, and yet it was synchronized in a way that created this beautiful expression of the game. And so as I studied that, I said, how do you create that? How do you create something so beautiful with a team of people who have to work together, that want to work together? And so the key themes that I discovered in that is, you know, attention to detail matters. If it's something that you can work on and practice and do well, then do it. Because that attention to detail, when it's game day, will come through.
You went to IBM and then went on to a distinguished career at Microsoft. There's a fair amount of creative destruction involved in those companies, including around the time you were there. What did you observe and what did you take away from those experiences?
Well, the technology industry has this unique property, and that it goes, waves of innovation hit the market, and those waves typically the new thing disrupts the old thing, but yet it builds on top of the old thing. And it sort of reinforces the view that if you're not constantly reimagining what you're doing, consumer behavior, technology, the changes in the world, a dynamic economy, a dynamic geopolitical situation can leave you behind. But it also reinforces in the process of reimagining the future, you have to know what grounds you to the past. Like, how do you have the wisdom to know what to honor and preserve from the past and the courage to boldly reimagine the future? And I believe it is that balance that is the most important thing.
You worked your way up in Microsoft to a very senior position, and at some point, Steve Ballmer, the head of Microsoft, brought you into a process with Howard Schultz to work on a project with Starbucks. When you first met Howard Schultz, what did you think of him?
Well, it was probably early 2000. Howard had sent a letter to Bill and to Steve asking Microsoft to partner with Starbucks on a project where Microsoft would contribute money to help Starbucks put Wi-Fi, internet connectivity, into all of Starbucks stores. And so Bill and Steve said, hey, Kevin, why don't you handle this for us? Steve and I took the meeting with Howard. He drove over across the lake, and we sat down in the conference room at Microsoft. And Howard painted the vision for what he was going to do to now bring technology into Starbucks stores and do that in partnership with Microsoft. And it was clear at the time meeting Howard that he had a clear vision for what he was trying to do, and yet he had this unique proposal was he wanted to bring technology to Starbucks and he wanted Microsoft to pay for it. And so we found a way that sort of worked out a way where we kind of both paid for it, but it had benefits to Microsoft at the time. And I just thought, Howard's a very creative, very persuasive, and a very thoughtful person. And so that's when I first met Howard.
You left Microsoft eventually to become a CEO for the first time. What made you make that decision, and what was it like becoming a CEO? Because until you've been a CEO, you haven't been a CEO.
When I received some outreach for an opportunity in Silicon Valley to lead Juniper Networks, and certainly the founder of Juniper Networks, Pradeep Sindhu, was there, and the prior CEO, Scott Krenz, wonderful people. And here was a small company that also had a vision of changing the world by bringing internet connectivity to the masses. And so it was just an opportunity for me at a time in my life where I felt like if I'm ever going to do this, now is the time.
At Jupiter, you got Kevin's company, as you put it, but then you got a curveball thrown to you with a health issue, I think it's fair to say. Tell me about that, and what particularly did you learn from it?
I'd gone to just an annual physical one day and was diagnosed with melanoma, and did 2 or 3 surgeries to on front of my arm to get the cancer, and with melanoma, there's always the question: did it get in the bloodstream? Is it in lymph nodes? How far has this gone? So there's a set of treatment to go through to explore to make sure that everything is taken care of. And one day I was still trying to do my job as CEO of Juniper Networks and deal with my health issues. I was sitting in the San Francisco International Airport about to board a United flight to Europe to meet with customers. And I had just called and rescheduled my doctor's appointments. And as I sat in the waiting area to board that flight, I thought to myself, why am I doing this? Why, through my actions, have I prioritized meeting customers in Europe over my health, my life, everything I love, my family, my friends? And so it was a clarifying moment for me. It was a moment that I decided, sitting right there in the San Francisco International Airport, that for the rest of my life, I only wanted to do things that were joyful with people I love. And so that was a moment that I decided it was time for me to retire from operating roles. I worked with the Juniper board and helped them make a transition, CEO transition, and retired. And my wife and I moved back into our home here in Seattle and focused on my health and spent time with my 2 sons that I wish I would have spent more time with when they were younger. And traveled with friends and focused on things, being present with people that I love. And so that was a learning that will stay with me for the rest of my life.
You did go back into operating roles, I think it's fair to say, eventually, as first the COO and then ultimately the CEO of Starbucks. When you took over as CEO, one of the early things you did was close down Tivana. Big big decision. Did the board know you were headed that direction when they picked you, or did you come to that decision after you became CEO?
Well, I made that decision after becoming CEO, but I view the responsibility that I have as one of having the wisdom to know what to honor and preserve from the past and the courage to boldly reimagine the future. That is the path forward to build an enduring company. And yet at the same time, I know that in a transition from founder-led to founder-inspired, those transitions oftentimes are the most difficult and the most critical transition that any company will go through. But it was very clear to us, to me, that with Teavana, we acquired Teavana, all of a sudden we're selling over $1.6 billion of Teavana in Starbucks stores, and these 300 Teavana stores and malls are struggling. So why don't we just close those stores down, write that off, and let Teavana thrive and succeed in Starbucks? So it's the realization that we are a branded house. We're not a house of brands.
As you say, that transition from founder to the succession is a difficult one. How did you manage that with Howard?
Well, the things that I am absolutely staying true to are the most important things. The mission and the culture of this company. And at the heart of it, that's who we are. You know, we've built this business. We're now over 30,000 stores around the world, 380,000 Starbucks partners who proudly wear the green apron, serving 100 million customers a week. We are about creating an experience in our stores that is grounded around human connection over coffee. And so I'm staying true to all of that. And what with the Teavana Mall stores is eliminating distractions so we can spend more of our time on our purpose. And our purpose goes far beyond the pursuit of profit. It certainly includes the pursuit of profit, but it also includes the pursuit of doing good. You know, Howard has been, he's been supportive every step of the way, as has the board.
Your strategy, as I understand it, in large part relies upon growing U.S. and growing China. Those are two big priorities. Take China first. I think you're adding like a store every 15 hours, something like that in China. How long can you keep doing that? At what point is there saturation in China?
Well, we can do that at least for decades to come. I mean, I haven't calculated, but it'll go, beyond my lifetime. We could go at that rate.
And the demand is there on the part of the Chinese people.
The demand continues to grow, and you see the Chinese, consumers are primarily a tea drinking culture who have been introduced to premium Arabica coffee. And so, we continue, we'll build a net new 600 stores a year in China off of a base. I think we're over 3,500 plus stores today. There's 300 million people in China in the middle class. That's projected to double over the next few years. They are consuming more coffee, and that's just going to continue to grow. I look at the fact that over this next 3 years, we're going to build Starbucks into 100 new cities in China that we are not currently in. And every one of those cities is larger than the population of Los Angeles. And so, we will be building new stores in China for decades to come.
You don't have quite that much headroom in the United States. At what point do you reach saturation, and how do you get around that problem?
Well, we've used analytics and data to help us better understand where to build new stores in the U.S. And right now that's showing us that, throughout the Sun Belt, there's many parts of the United States that are still underpenetrated. And so there's still a lot of headroom in the U.S., but we have to complement building new stores in the U.S. with growing same-store comparables in our existing stores. And that's the balance that we have to strike. I'd say there's three primary things that we focus on. One is are we innovating in ways that elevate the customer experience in our stores? And the second is, are we innovating around beverage to bring new and exciting beverages to our customers? Over the last 3 years, I think the mix of beverages we sell in Starbucks is now roughly 50% cold and 50% hot. And that's because a lot of the innovation, whether it's Cloud Macchiato or iced espresso beverages, Teavana shaken iced teas, refreshers, cold brew, nitro cold brew, has opened up a whole new wave of customers. So it's innovation around the customer experience, it's innovation around beverage, and it's innovation around digital. And the fact that in the U.S. now we have over 30 million digitally registered customers, we're approaching 17 million active rewards members. Over 40% of all the tender in our stores in the U.S. is paid for on the mobile app and the loyalty card. So those are the key things. And if we innovate in those three areas, in a way that is grounded in what our customers are looking for, we've got a long runway of growth ahead.
It's the crafting, the handcrafted
Yeah.
beverages, but it's also the experience when you're in the store.
That's right.
And I'll give you a simple example. In my local Starbucks, you know, when I go in now, a lot of people they've ordered in advance online, they come in, they pick it up, and they go. That's not the traditional Starbucks experience.
Well, as you point out, you know, customers, the digital and mobile revolution over the last decade has really amplified the need state of convenience. And that's true in every part of society. I mean, you can make an airline reservation, pick your seat selection, get your boarding pass, and check in on your phone, and go through TSA with your boarding pass. So this need state of convenience, you have to acknowledge, consumers are embracing it. So how do we embrace it? How do we embrace it without abandoning the need state of community, but complementing the need state of community? And that's what we have attempted to do, and I think that's what we continue to get better and better at each day.
You've made a significant announcement with the Valor Siren Fund. $100 million, you hope to have another $300 million put into it. Explain what that's about. Is that to develop new brands apart from Starbucks that you would own, or at least own a significant part of?
Now, this is really about accelerating the velocity of innovation for core Starbucks. We have shifted from what I call a long cycle innovation model that was just too slow. It would take us 18 to 24 months from idea to get something deployed in our stores. Too long. We've shifted from that to a mantra of going from idea to action in 100 days, and then learn and adapt. Now, what we found is we have great ideas from within Starbucks, but we want to expand our view of ideas from outside of Starbucks. There are many early stage, growth stage companies that are innovators that have great ideas that can help a food and beverage merchant like Starbucks. And so to do that, we have partnered with Valor Equity Partners. We are the cornerstone investor in the Valor Siren Ventures Fund. And what we do then is we get a front row seat to all these new innovative companies. And if we see companies that we think would be great, we could use their technology or their ideas here at Starbucks, we enter into a commercial relationship with those companies, and Valor Siren Ventures would make the investment in those companies.
Howard Schultz, when he passed the baton to you, described you as a servant leader. And early on in your tenure, you got a chance to demonstrate that when you had an incident in a store of Philadelphia. Tell us how you responded to that and what caused you to decide how you responded to it.
Well, first of all, when something like that happens, you know, the first question I asked is, how could this have ever happened in a Starbucks? But, you know, quickly you realize that we, serving 100 million customers a week, are a microcosm of society. And we know this kind of thing happens in society, where two young black men in our stores waiting to have a business meeting with another customer were asked to leave, and then the police were called and they were escorted out of the store. So when that happened, you know, I realized that this is a time where, as a leader, you show up. It's not something that you delegate or point the finger to. You show up personally. And so that first day when that happened, I wrote a letter to all customers and partners. And the next day I was on the plane. And I had many great people give me advice on how to think about this. And one of the individuals I spoke to before I was on the ground in Philadelphia was Eric Holder. And he gave me some wonderful advice. He said, Kevin, you will have extreme pressure to answer questions before you've had the full opportunity to understand all of the facts and be intentional about your decisions. He said, I encourage you, get on the ground, learn as much as you can, and as you learn and you make decisions, be intentional and be clear, but don't be pressured to have to answer those questions too soon. So I landed in Philadelphia. And I met with everyone I could meet with. I met with store partners, I met with the mayor, the police chief. That first day I even had the opportunity to sit down with the two young men that we had arrested in our stores. And, you know, and from that, it became clear to me that there is an action here that we are going to take, because this is not who we are. And the actions we are going to take are going to put us on a journey to be a better company. And so by the second day, I announced we were closing all Starbucks stores on the afternoon of May 29th to go through anti-bias training. And that was just the beginning of a journey. Since then, we have now built a complete program where we have educational sessions we call pour-over sessions that we distribute to our 150,000 plus Starbucks partners in the US every month. And it is making us a better company.
Starbucks stands for certain values. you pay your partners well. You give medical benefits to people who work as few as, I guess, 20 hours a week. Explain the trade-off there between that and profitability.
Well, I think the first thing is, I get up every morning and work in service of the 380,000 Starbucks partners who proudly wear the green apron, because I know they are working in service of the 100 million customers we serve each week. And so to create that experience for our customers, it starts by taking care of our partners. And I put that at the top of the list of my responsibilities. And that means we're going to pay them a good wage. We provide them health care for part-time workers. The Starbucks College Achievement Plan, we will help them get an education and graduate debt-free. We now have over 12,000 Starbucks partners in the US are enrolled and attending courses through ASU. And so we are going to work first and foremost to take care of our partners. And by doing that, I can demonstrate that we have much lower or much higher retention, much lower attrition than anyone else in the food and beverage industry. And by having high retention, that means our partners in the stores are building relationships with the customers that visit their store. That's what leads to increased frequency. That's what leads to loyalty to Starbucks. And so, much of what we created begins by taking care of our partners.
You also have expressed values about the environment, about sustainability. Tell us about your initiatives here with green cups and the use of straws, some things that are much in the news these days.
Well, sustainability is a core pillar of our focus, and it starts with making coffee the first sustainable agricultural product. And we have agronomists and farmer support centers helping farmers around the world improve the quality and the yield of their coffee. We've provided over 30 million disease-resistant trees to coffee farmers. We've contributed 50 million to the Global Farmer Fund to help farmers. So it starts with coffee. But then it goes beyond that. It says we want to serve that coffee in sustainable packaging. And that means things like our green straws. Plastic straws don't get recycled. And so we invented a new strawless lid, and we're eliminating plastic straws by the year 2020. The cup is recyclable, but not all municipalities have the equipment to recycle it. So we kicked off a Next Gen Cup Challenge a year ago. We've got entries from all over the world on how to create a more sustainable cup. And so we're on a journey. We're on a journey to not only sustainability of coffee, but sustainably package that coffee, as well as the stores we build. We're the largest builder of LEED certified buildings in the world. And then you go beyond that. In our Greener Apron program, we're now teaching partners how to operate those stores more sustainably. So, we are on a mission, and I would acknowledge we have a lot more we can do and a lot more we will do because we're committed.
Kevin, thank you so much. It was really good. Coca-Cola operates in a lot of different countries, which means there's a lot of different regulatory systems, a lot of different legal schemes you have to really adapt to. Let's talk about a couple of those. First of all, the United States. The tax cuts. How does it affect Coca-Cola?
Yeah, we're still working through the numbers. I mean, our tax rate last year effectively was about 24%, so it's not the biggest change to us. Because we're an international company, the absolute rate hasn't affected us as much as perhaps some of the more domestically focused enterprises. But we're positive on moving the territorial system. So we think the simplification is positive in the long run. To the extent that it helps create more demand, that will be good news too. We're still working through the numbers that we'll lay out on our earnings call. Of course, we're part of having some of the money overseas, but in the end, if it generates more economic growth, that will lift all the boats.
Does the expensing of capital investment affect you at all?
Not in a great amount. I mean, it will make some difference. We'll lay that out, but that's not the biggest moving piece for us.
And if there is significant incremental cash available to Coca-Cola, have you decided yet, does it go into capital investment? Does it go into buybacks of shares? Does it go into dividends?
I mean, we weren't short of cash at the end of the day, so we've been a successful company. We've got the resources we need to invest in the marketplace. We're still working through exactly how the puts and takes work, because obviously you've got to pay tax on the cash first, or in addition. So we're looking at how we use all that and how we make the right capital allocations.
One of the really big issues for the United States right now is the so-called dreamers. These are the young people who were brought here as children. And the question is, do they get to stay as adults, essentially? Do you have at Coca-Cola people who are really uncertain about whether they can stay or not? There are about 700,000 more or less nationwide.
Yeah, we have some people in our company and in our bottling partners who fall under the Dreamers or the Dakar program. We would love government to find a way to make proper underlying immigration reform, and including finding a solution for the Dreamers so that it's not so disruptive and that they can stay. So hopefully they'll find a path to that. Of course, partial solutions may be necessary, but we would love to see fundamental reform.
You ran Mexico for Coca-Cola at one point, so you have seen this issue on both sides of at least our southern border. Do you see a path forward, a constructive path forward on immigration?
I think there's a path forward, but I think it also is connected, and it can't be completely disassociated when you think about long-term fundamental reform from getting both economies to grow. In the end, part of what drives the informal immigration is the disparity in the economic outlook. So having a community of North America where all the economies are growing actually helps solve that problem too. So I think leadership from the United States to drive growth will help solve some of these other issues too.
You've also seen NAFTA from both sides of the border. You've seen that issue, which is another hot issue right now in the United States. Has NAFTA overall been good or bad for the United States?
My view would be that free trade deals are good overall for all participants, and I think it's been good for North America and all the countries in it. Doesn't mean it's perfect. Very few free trade deals are perfect. So can it be made better? Yes, I hope they can make it better. But I don't think we should start deconstructing global trade. I think it's been a powerful engine for lifting all boats. It doesn't mean it's solved all problems. There are questions of income inequality. There are questions of not all the rules were perfect and need to be improved. But let's go forward, not backwards.
So when President Trump first came in, he was very closely allied with many people in business. He consulted, and he had panels that he talked with as well. Do you get to talk, either President Trump or the administration, about things like NAFTA? I mean, do they consult you, or do you make your views known to them?
When there are things where we have a view or it affects our business, we make our views known either directly to the administration or through many of the business forums, like the Business Roundtable. There are enough points of intersection collectively and individually with the administration that they know what we think.
So from that, do you have any sense of where we're headed with NAFTA? Because there are conflicting reports. I mean, the Canadians seem to be preparing for actually U.S. withdrawal. There are a lot of people in Washington say, no, we're not going to withdraw. Do you have any sense from your point of view of where we're headed?
My view on negotiations is you've got to let the negotiations negotiate. And if you're not in the room, you don't know what the answer is until it comes out. So I think the important thing for those that aren't in the room is to keep saying what they believe to be true, what they believe to be the areas where things can be made better. And then the negotiators have got to get in the room and thrash it out. And trying to work out what color the smoke is coming from the room doesn't lead you anywhere until they come out and tell you what the answer is.
Your native country has voted in a referendum to leave the EU. And I won't ask you what you think about that, but tell us how that's developing. I mean, is there a soft landing there that you can see? How would we get to it?
It does a bit go back to my point about negotiations. You're never really sure until the cake is cooked. I think the logic of the economics is a softer rather than a harder Brexit. I think in the end, whilst it won't be a catastrophe one way or the other, life will be better. There'll be more economic growth if it's a softer Brexit, but there's a lot of details and a lot of different points of view to work out, because in the end, the referendum wasn't between do you want this or that. It's like, do you want this or not want this? It wasn't a referendum around the version of the exit, which is kind of where we're trapped at the moment. And of course, there's a lot of negotiations going on. It's very important to get it right for the UK and to some extent for Europe as well.
Whether it's Brexit or whether it's NAFTA, how do these trade issues affect Coca-Cola's business?
I think one of the great benefits of the Coca-Cola system is we're global, but we're extremely local. I mean, we manufacture in every country virtually that we sell in. Virtually everything that's sold in the US is made in the US. Virtually everything that's sold in Mexico is made in Mexico. Virtually everything that's sold in the UK or France is made in that individual country. So the global trade restrictions or openings don't tend to affect us heavily in the moment. To the extent that they reduce or increase total economic growth, that's what matters to us. And so I think philosophically, we're pro global free trade because it drives economic growth. Therefore, let's focus on making those deals better because it will provide the wealth to then solve a lot of society's problems.
You came in and took over Coca-Cola and really trumpeted innovation as critical to your future. I believe you have a chief innovation officer, but maybe you're the chief innovation officer in some sense. How do you innovate in a 130-year-old company that's so well known around the world, has been there for so long, has such an entrenched perception of people's views?
It's hard. I mean, any institution that's been around a long time, whether it's a company or a government or any organization, it's going to be very hard. So I think, from my point of view, if I'm not the chief innovator, I'm certainly the chief agitator for innovation. And what that means is, driving the culture to try and do a few things upon top of everything else we do. Stay curious. If we're not curious about the outside world, about the consumers, about the customer, about what's changing, how will we innovate? But curiosity just leads you to an insight. It's very passive. You need to drive empowerment so people feel they can go and do something, that they're not waiting for head office to make the decision, that they can get up in the morning and go and do something. And I think the next thing is you've got to be inclusive. You've got to try and connect the pieces because we've got a tremendous global knowledge and tremendous global system. Sometimes your idea has already been tried somewhere else. So connect to the other parts of the system. And lastly, we probably fell into the trap of trying to make things perfect before we did anything in the past. No, we need to learn from some of the software companies, have version 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. That gets us both innovation and speed. And if we keep pushing those four things, I think we'll make progress.
And how do you know? How does James Quincey know whether you're getting the innovation job done? And I mean that in the sense you're sitting atop a very large organization, a lot of people spread around the world. How do you judge whether the word's getting down and people are already changing their behavior?
It's hard to know, but the only way forward is to look for multiple signals. No, there's no one number or one metric that's going to give it the answer. So we have employee surveys where we ask people. We can look at the sales number and measure the success rate or the number and the success rate of the things we put into the marketplace. We can look at what our research and development pipeline is generating, and are we really getting new patents? Are we really making progress? So I think one has to have a dashboard to look across and say, is there progress? Technology,
it's disrupting just about every company that we know of today. How is it affecting Coca-Cola? And first talk about how it's affecting your relationship with your consumer. How you deliver to your consumer, things like e-commerce, how you market to your consumer.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of look at it in three buckets. How we engage with consumers, there used to be TV advertising, now there's social media. The ways of engaging with the consumer are changing rapidly. Who the customer is and how the shopping actually happens is changing rapidly. And of course, internally it's changing rapidly. With the consumer, around the world, TV is still the biggest vehicle, maybe less so in some of the developed economies, but around the world it's still the biggest vehicle. But a lot of it's going into social media. We work closely a lot with a lot of the new tech companies in social media, trying to find ways to continue to have a brand role. I mean, in the end, someone's got to pay for the content to be developed, whether that's through advertising or sponsorship. So I think there's a lot of change going on. We're adapting. I think we feel we're kind of towards the front end. But what I'm totally clear of, it's going to be different in 5 years and it's going to be very different in 10 years. And we're going to have to keep investing in innovation and keep evolving to stay close to the consumers.
As you look around the world, which markets do you see the fastest innovation when it comes to e-commerce? When we just sort of get on your app and you order something up, it gets delivered, for example. Is it China? Is it the United States? Is it Europe?
I actually think that places like Shanghai and some parts of Western Europe are on the cutting edge along with some of the bits of the US, but really at a par. I mean, the US in many respects, there's a lot of advanced e-commerce, but I can tell you it's very advanced in places like Shanghai and Western Europe as well, and the penetration of e-commerce in aggregate is even higher in some of those places than even the US. So, when you want to learn what's going on, I would be just as tempted to tell you go to Shanghai as stay in New York.
And how do you market in that circumstance? I mean, we're used to going to a fast food restaurant, for example, and there's a Coca-Cola there. It's on the menu.
Yeah.
So let's have that Coke or that Diet Coke.
Yeah.
You don't have that when you're on your app.
No, but you have to get it. I mean, you know, if you went back even 2 or 3 years in China, for example, when a lot of the apps and the mobile payment systems came in, we weren't on the menu. Actually, even worse, we were trying to sell perhaps a returnable glass bottle to the restaurant, which had no way of being in the delivery system. So we've had to re-engineer our business system very quickly to both be present on the app. So what's the virtual representation of what you'd normally see in the store? And how do we change the packaging portfolio so that we can be part of the delivery system? And you have a lot of places in Shanghai where food ordered on apps and delivered is 30–50% of the restaurant sales.
That's the relationship with the consumer. Talk about Coca-Cola as Coca-Cola. How is technology changing the way you do business, and for that matter, your workforce?
It's changing it in lots of profound ways. I mean, in simple terms, you know, you go back 10, 20 years, we were a large company and we're one of the few that could afford to invest in expensive IT systems and do our own stuff, our own programs, our own server farms. You wind forward to today, that's no longer the model. We've had to move to the cloud. We've had to move to standard programs that whole industries use, and we had to use the mobile. The one thing I always say to the IT department is, just put it on the phone. Everything can be done on the phone. Let's just move everything to mobile on the phone. The old days of IT had training budgets. Why? Everyone knows how to use the apps on the phone. So it's profoundly changing the way that we work, and I think it's going to continue to flow through the organization. We have a big program of digitizing the company.
Does that translate into fewer employees as a practical matter because of the efficiencies from digital?
I think for sure it changes into a different profile. I mean, people are having to adapt to doing things in a different way. We've actually made a lot of changes in our IT departments to move to a different skill set. So it's certainly changing the nature of employment and the sorts of profiles you want. Whether we buy the services ourselves or we buy the services or do it ourselves makes a difference as to where the employees are. But net, more employment's being generated in the economies.
So can Coca-Cola compete with Silicon Valley and the digital startups when you're trying to recruit the young computer scientists?
Well, Atlanta is a very fast-growing economy. The state of Georgia has been ranked, you know, top 1 or 2 of place to do business in the U.S. for many years in a row. The local political system has done a great job, so has the city. So it's a very competitive economy there, and we do very well in it. We're happy to see Atlanta and Georgia growing, and they've done a lot to invest in tech startups and the media industry in and near Atlanta, and it's being very successful.
As you look toward really substantial growth in these new beverage categories, are you looking at acquisitions? Are you looking at organic growth? I mean, you have been inclined, I believe, to look for smaller brands, startup brands, bringing them along. Is that the future path to a significant degree for Coca-Cola?
I think it's going to be both. I mean, we have grown organically, but we have made these bolt-on acquisitions, as we call them, the little small ones, the niche brands. I think where we see that something is a really good idea, we invest in them. Sometimes we buy them, sometimes we just invest with them. But there's a quid pro quo. They get the capital that we inject, yet we can introduce them to the globe, not just the country that they've launched in. And that's helped us double the number of billion-dollar brands that we sell around the world. So I think it's going to be an and strategy rather than one or the other.
It's interesting, it's a total beverage company. It's not a food company. I mean, there are some competitors who said, let's become a food company, at least in part. Why did you make that decision? And does it make you any more vulnerable, forgive me for saying, but even to acquisition? I mean, you're what, $200 billion market cap? It's a pretty big acquisition, but there are some pretty big consolidations in the food industry out there.
I think firstly, you know, we're focused on beverages because that's where the greatest synergy and the greatest application of our know-how and our fabulous global bottling distribution system is. It's the thing that can be most synergistic with what we've already got. And the market for beverages is one of the best growing markets in the whole of the supermarket or in the other stores. So it's a great market. We have a good position. We can create a lot of synergy. So it's a question of choices. I sometimes say never, which then causes confusion because people say you haven't ruled anything out. I say no, it's a question of what's most logical. And beverages are the most not logical thing for us to do first because we stick to our knitting. In terms of how we think about the consolidation, in the end of the day, I'm pretty convinced that investors, gold star goes to those that grow with expanding margins. Growth is the name of the game. If the category's got no growth, then optimize the margin. Okay, but that's still silver prize largely over the long term. So I'm pretty clear. If we focus on driving top-line growth, which we believe we can with our strategy of total beverages, we will attract an investor base that will be very happy with us over the long run.
World without waste, great goal. You have a big new packaging announcement. Why is it important to Coca-Cola, not just as a corporate citizen, but as a business?
You know, it's important to us for a very core part of our values. We've always believed that to have a healthy business, you need to be operating in a healthy community. And one of today's biggest problems is packaging waste. We've done a lot on making things recyclable. We've actually invested a lot of R&D in making progress on reusing it. What we need to do is collect it. So this announcement is about the big missing piece in generating a world without waste, which is collecting back the plastic and creating a market economy for that collected plastic. And I think that's going to do great things to help us grow into the future without creating waste, which is good for us and it's great for communities.
How are you going to attract all that plastic? By 2030, you want to be getting a bottle back for everyone you put out there. That's a lot of bottles for Coca-Cola. How are you going to attract all that plastic?
Well, to give you an idea of the dimension, we need to bring back, every person in the world, if they bring back 2 bottles a month, we bring back all our bottles. That's our objective. 2 bottles a month for every person. We collect every bottle we put out. How are we going to do it? Well, there'll be different systems in different countries. You know, every country needs a solution, but it won't be the same everywhere. There are kind of places where it's reasonably advanced in Europe, to more informal economies where the collection happens. So there's going to be different solutions everywhere. We're going to have to work with NGOs, other industrial companies and governments to put in place these solutions. But it's absolutely doable. And I think that's what's exciting about setting the objective.
We're very conscious of this in the United States, but what about in other places, like China, for example?
Yeah, look, I think the emerging and the developed countries are where more of the problem is than the US or Europe, which is probably at the leading edge. So we need to do more there. But recognize that in a lot of these countries, there is some informal collection system already going on across a wide range of waste. What we need to create is the circular economy. We need to create value for that. So often in the case, and we did this in Mexico, for example, you go back a little more than 10 years, it was less than 10% of the plastic was recycled. Now it's 60%. How? The informal economy was collecting the waste, but there was no market for it. No one wanted to buy it. So we went into the marketplace and bought the plastic, invested in factories to recycle that and reuse it in our bottles. So I think there's a model there for the Chinas and other parts of the world on how to create value out of plastic and get it reused.
You've laid out a bold strategic vision for your company called Total Beverage Company that includes things beyond Coca-Cola and even beyond Diet Coke. It goes on beyond that to these 5 categories. What's driving that? Is that basically to get away a bit from sugar drinks?
Actually, we're following the consumer. When you look at what's happening around the world, as the world is urbanizing, as people have got more disposable income, they're spending more money on a range of things, including beverages. So what's important within that growing market of beverages is they want more choice. Different people want different things. So if we really want to be able to serve the customer, serve the consumer, we've got to follow them. We've got to get into more categories. Coke is likely to remain the heart and soul of the company. It's the world's biggest fast-moving consumer good brand. But we need more. We need to offer consumers what they want all day long. We have to offer choice. And I think that's what's going to guide us forward. And in a way, it goes back to where we started. If we pay a lot of attention to what the consumer wants, they will take us to where the business needs to grow. And then it ultimately ends up in growth for the business.
I understand that on average around the world, people consume about 8 ounces of a beverage per day. And Coca-Cola, I was told, is about a half an ounce. What is your goal? How much of the market share of total beverage can you really take globally?
I don't think there's a end of history moment when we reach nirvana. I think what we're looking to do is gain share every year. I mean, it's a competitive marketplace. We have a lot of well-funded competitors doing a lot of exciting things. So what we're focused on is, can we serve the consumers and gain a little bit of share each year and generate a growing business system that our objective is to create value for everyone who touches that business system, whether it be the economics of the people who are in the value chain like the customer, or even society with initiatives like the packaging one, which I think builds on our heritage of creating shared value in the world. 10 years ago or so, we set ourselves the objective of being water neutral by 2020, and we achieved it a few years early. So we return to the environment all the water we use, which is one of the things that gives us confidence that we can achieve this packaging objective. So we get business growth and doing it in the right way for society.
Okay, thanks very much. We're wrapping up there. This was terrific. Thank you so much.